Okay, in this lesson what we're going to be doing is roughing out the torso. Now we're not going to be completing the entire thing for the simple fact that it's going to take quite a bit of time for all the specific areas on the torso. We get into the chest, we get into the stomach, the ribs, etc. So we're going to start out by roughing it in. We'll keep all these lessons relatively short. With that, we're starting out here with the head. We've got the intro out of the way, so let's go ahead and get busy. Zach, why don't you go and start out by, let's just hide that head.
Okay, we'll get the head out of the way. Just right-click on it and hit Hide Selection. And now, in the back view, I'm going to create a box and just drag it over our torso. And we'll take its thickness up a little bit. You'll notice that my segments are length 4, width 2, and height 2.
And something that a complete beginner out there might be wondering, why not length segments 5 or 6? Is there anything specific that you're looking at on the actual drawing to help determine that?
Absolutely, and before I really get in and start showing that, let me go ahead and stick our modeling material on top of this character.
Because it will make showing why a little easier.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this, and just real quick, some of you who have been using Max for a while might be familiar with its see-through option, which you can activate with Alt-X, where you can see through your character. This is nice, but you'll notice when you activate it that it also activates a sort of specularity on your material, which could get in the way if you're modeling a very rounded organic surface. So instead of using Alt-X, we've actually created a material in which we've animated the opacity. You can notice down here in the corner that opacity has a little red bounding box around it, which means animation is on it. So as I switch between frame 0 and 1, our shape goes transparent. So I'm going to right-click to get out of my box tool, and just go ahead and make this guy transparent, and close the material editor.
Okay, so back to talking about the segments. How do you determine how many segments are in there? As a matter of fact, I know that you're really anxious to go ahead and start shaping, so if you want to start shaping along with the answer to that, that might make things a little cleaner.
In just a sec, first let me go ahead and center up this cube a little bit. When we drew it, we kind of did that by hand, and it's not really lined up with the center of the viewport. So I'm going to right-click on my X and Z spinners, and that will kind of straighten it out a little more. Also, before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and scale this up to kind of fit the torso just a little better. You might notice sometimes when you're using hand-drawn image planes that occasionally things aren't perfectly symmetrical. Don't worry about that. We're going to be using a symmetry modifier just like we did in the last video to make a perfectly symmetrical character. Having a look at our character, we notice that we've got 4 distinct areas. We've got the chest, we've got the ribs, which are very distinct themselves, and the stomach area, and then down into the crotch. So this is why I've chosen a length segment of 4, so that as we're working on our character, it is already divided up. We don't have to come in here with a slice plane and actually change things around. Really just kind of getting some of the work out of the way before we even get going.
Very good.
So I'm going to jump over to a left view, and this is not lined up with our character at all.
Not at all.
So I'm going to scale it up only in X, and I'm going to move it again only in X. And the reason for that is we can assume that we've already got things lined up in the other axes, so we don't need to worry about that. Also, I'm in the view state as far as my translation coordinates.
Your reference coordinate system.
My reference coordinate system, thank you, sorry. So we're going to use those for now. If I switch over, just kind of pay attention to that. So I'm going to go ahead and shape my alien out just a little bit in the back view. First thing I need to do is right-click on it and convert it to an editable poly. Then under my selections, I'm going to go to Polygon Subobject Mode, and I'm going to delete everything on the right side, that's our left, of the character, and get rid of the isolated vertices. And this is just like what we did in the first VTM, so I'm not going to go into a real heavy explanation of this. I'm going to press 1 to go to Vertex Subobject Mode, and then with my Move tool, I'm just going to start moving around some of this detail. You'll notice I'm marquee selecting. That's also selecting the vertices at the back of our character, which for now is really going to help speed things up. Also, when you're moving vertices that are on the seam, be sure you're only moving them in Y and not X. If you do that, you'll break your seam later on. So this is lining our character up pretty well in the front view. So I'll come in here to the left view, and I'm just going to kind of move detail around by hand and sort of make this follow the line, the outline of our character much more clearly. We won't worry about his butt too much right now. Whoop.
That was interesting.
That was great. So this is looking pretty good. We'll place this pretty close to the stomach. We're going to be tweaking all of this stuff as we work anyway. As we use NURM subdivision, we'll notice that things smooth out. Some detail might not be exactly where we think it will. So this is just kind of a rough approximation, hence the term roughing out the character.
Exactly.
So we'll jump back to the perspective view, and I'll shade this guy back up. And here's what we got. But before we get done here, we need to go ahead and apply our symmetry modifier. I'm going to press 6 to jump out of the editable poly mode. And then in my list, I'm going to sift down to the symmetry modifier and press enter. And if I do that, if I leave the subobject mode and go all the way out to the actual object, it's going to actually create that at the origin, which means I don't have to move my mirror around at all. And there we go. We have our torso roughed out and symmetrical on each side.
Okay, so a couple of things at this point. If we want to go back down and continue working with vertices, for those that may want to throw the symmetry modifier on right away from the beginning, you would want to go ahead and click on the Show End Results if you want to go ahead and show them that real quick.
Okay, well, if we're going down and we start working with our vertices, we'll notice that our symmetry modifier goes away, so to speak.
Right.
And we don't see the other half of our model. So we have a button over here under our stack that's Show End Result On-Off Toggle, and we click that, and we can see the other side. This is really great because as we're moving around and working inside of Max, the symmetry modifier will update, and we can see things actually change as we model along.
Exactly. Okay, good. And so with that, that's pretty much going to finish up this lesson because, after all, there's a roughed-in torso.
Exactly.
All right, so thanks, everyone.